The crowd falls silent as footsteps echo through the empty hallway. A child's voice rings out, clear and determined. I can't do it. 3 simple words that have stopped more dreams than any external force ever could. 3 words that continue to haunt countless adults who once stood where that child stands now, facing what seems like an insurmountable challenge. But here's what that child didn't know, and what many of us still don't realize. Those words, I can't do it, are nothing more than a temporary condition. They're not a life sentence. They're not even a truth. They're simply a moment in time when discipline hasn't yet been applied. Think back to the first time you rode a bicycle. Remember those wobbly moments, the scrapped knees, the fear of falling. Every single person who has ever mastered cycling started with those exact same thoughts. I can't do this. Yet millions upon millions of people around the world ride bicycles today. What changed? It wasn't the bicycle. It wasn't the laws of physics. It wasn't even their natural ability. What changed was the application of discipline, the decision to keep getting back on that bike day after day until I can't transformed into I can. This transformation, this magical metamorphosis from inability to ability, isn't reserved for childhood bicycle lessons. It's the fundamental truth that governs every achievement in human history. Every door that seems locked, every mountain that appears unclimbable, every goal that feels unreachable, they all bow before the power of discipline. Let me share something with you that might change the way you view your life forever. In the quiet hours of early morning, while most of the world sleeps, there are people out there practicing their craft. They're not necessarily more talented than you. They're not blessed with some magical gift. They simply understand a truth that has eluded so many. Discipline is the master key that unlocks every door. Consider the concert pianist who moves audiences to tears with their performance. Behind those moments of pure artistry lie thousands of hours of scales and exercises. Hours spent alone with their instrument when nobody was watching, when no applause was forthcoming, when the only reward was the knowledge that they were one step closer to mastery. That's discipline. Or think about the small business owner who turned their dream into reality. They didn't just wake up one morning with a successful enterprise. They spent countless evenings poring over books, learning about accounting, marketing, and management. They sacrificed comfortable evenings on the couch to build something meaningful. That's discipline. But here's where many of us get stuck. We look at these examples and think, well, they must have some special motivation that I don't have. We convince ourselves that successful people somehow found a secret wellspring of willpower that makes discipline easier for them. This is perhaps the most dangerous myth we tell ourselves, because it gives us permission to avoid the truth. Discipline isn't about motivation at all. Discipline is about making a decision once and then letting that decision govern your actions regardless of how you feel in the moment. It's about creating a contract with yourself and honoring it especially when you don't want to. Let me ask you something. Do you brush your teeth every day? Of course you do. Do you wait for motivation to strike before you do it? Do you need to psych yourself up for this daily task? No. You do it because somewhere along the line you made a decision that this was something you would do every day. That's discipline in its purest form. Now, what if you applied that same principle to every area of your life that matters to you? What if you treated your dreams with the same non-negotiable commitment as brushing your teeth? There's a baker in a small town who wanted to create the perfect loaf of bread. Every morning for years he would bake a fresh batch. Each day he would examine his creation, identify what could be better, and make minute adjustments to his recipe. He didn't wait for inspiration. He didn't need motivation. He simply showed up day after day, refining his craft through disciplined practice. This is where most people miss the point about discipline. They think it's about forcing yourself to do difficult things. But real discipline, the kind that transforms lives, is about creating systems and habits that make success inevitable. It's about making the right choice so many times that it becomes your default setting. Water for a moment, soft, flowing water. When it first encounters a rock, it doesn't make a dent. The second time, still nothing visible happens. The 1,000th time, still no apparent change. But that water, through consistent, disciplined action, will eventually carve through solid rock, creating magnificent canyons and valleys. This is precisely how discipline works in our lives. You might be sitting there thinking, but you don't understand, my situation is different. I've tried before and failed. Let me tell you something. Failure isn't the opposite of discipline. Giving up is. Every person who has ever achieved anything meaningful has failed countless times along the way. The difference is, they understood that failure is not a period that ends the sentence. It's a comma that leads to the next attempt. Consider the writer who faces the blank page every morning. Some days the words flow like a river. Other days each word must be dragged out like a stubborn mule. But here's the key. They show up regardless. They sit in that chair and they write, whether they feel inspired or not. That's discipline, and over time those daily deposits into the bank of discipline compound into something remarkable. But perhaps you're wondering about the cost of discipline. What will I have to give up, you might ask? This is where we need to shift our perspective. Discipline isn't about giving things up. It's about choosing what you want most over what you want now. It's about understanding that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. When you choose to watch television instead of working on your goals, you're not just saying yes to entertainment, you're saying no to your dreams. When you choose to hit the snooze button instead of getting up to exercise, you're not just saying yes to extra sleep, you're saying no to your health. These aren't judgments, they're simply choices. And discipline is about making these choices consciously, rather than letting them make themselves. There's a profound truth that few people talk about when it comes to discipline. It's the great equalizer in life. While we can't control our natural talents, our circumstances of birth, or the opportunities that come our way, we all have the same 24 hours in a day. And what we do with those hours, that's where discipline makes all the difference. Consider two seeds planted in the same soil. One receives consistent water, sunlight, and care. The other receives attention only when someone remembers or feels like tending to it. Which plant do you think will thrive? Which will struggle? The difference isn't in the potential of the seeds, it's in the discipline of their care. Discipline creates a framework for success that talent alone can never match. There's a carpenter who works in a small workshop. His hands aren't particularly skilled by nature, and he wasn't born into a family of craftsmen. But every single day he practices his cuts. Every single day he studies his joints. Every single day he works to improve his technique. Over time, his disciplined approach has turned him into a master craftsman who can create pieces of extraordinary beauty. Now here's where most people get trapped. They look at the master carpenter's work and say, I could never do that. But they're missing the crucial point. The master carpenter couldn't do it either, not at first. What sets him apart isn't some innate ability to work with wood. It's the discipline to show up every day and make one more cut, learn one more technique, solve one more problem. This brings us to an essential truth about discipline. It's not about perfection, it's about consistency. Think about a garden. A garden doesn't need you to be perfect. It doesn't need you to do everything right all at once. What it needs is consistent care. A little water every day is far better than a flood once a month. A few minutes of weeding regularly is more effective than hours of frantic cleanup once the weeds have taken over. The same principle applies to every area of your life. Your relationships don't need you to be the perfect friend, spouse, or parent. They need you to show up consistently, to listen regularly, to care continuously. Your health doesn't need you to run a marathon tomorrow. It needs you to make slightly better choices every day. Your career doesn't need you to become CEO overnight. It needs you to consistently deliver value, learn persistently, and grow steadily. But here's where many people stumble. They confuse discipline with deprivation. They think being disciplined means living a life of constant sacrifice and denial. Nothing could be further from the truth. Real discipline isn't about punishment. It's about freedom. Consider a musician who has mastered their instrument. Through years of disciplined practice, they've gained the freedom to express any emotion, play any piece, create any melody their heart desires. Their discipline hasn't confined them. It has liberated them. The same is true for a chef who has mastered their craft, an artist who has honed their skills, or an athlete who has trained their body. This brings us to another crucial aspect of discipline. It's not about controlling yourself, it's about creating yourself. Every time you choose to honor your commitments, you're not just completing a task, you're building your character. Every time you choose the harder, right over the easy or wrong, you're not just making a decision, you're defining who you are. There's a tailor in a quiet corner of town who spends hours ensuring every stitch is perfect. Not because someone is watching, not because it's required, but because that's who he has chosen to be through years of disciplined dedication to his craft. His discipline isn't a burden he bears, it's an expression of his character. But perhaps you're thinking, that's all well and good, but what about when things get really tough? What about when life throws unexpected challenges our way? This is where the true power of discipline reveals itself. Discipline isn't just about doing things when they're easy. It's about having a foundation to stand on when things get hard. A ship at sea. When the waters are calm, any vessel can stay on course. But when the storm hits, it's the ship with a well-trained crew, maintained equipment, and established procedures that has the best chance of making it through. The discipline maintained during peaceful times becomes the lifeline during turbulent ones. The same principle applies to our lives. The discipline of maintaining healthy habits, nurturing relationships, and developing skills becomes our anchor when life's storms hit. The person who has cultivated the discipline of saving money has options when unexpected expenses arise. The person who has maintained the discipline of physical fitness has reserves to draw upon when health challenges emerge. The person who has developed the discipline of continuous learning has adaptability when their industry changes. This is where we need to address another misconception about discipline. Many people think discipline means having unwavering willpower, never experiencing doubt or weakness. But true discipline isn't about being superhuman. It's about being persistently human. It's about acknowledging our struggles while refusing to be defined by them. Consider an archer practicing their craft. They know that not every arrow will hit the bullseye. Some will miss the target entirely. But they also know that each shot, whether perfect or flawed, is part of their journey toward mastery. The discipline isn't in never missing. It's in taking the next shot regardless of the last one's outcome. This brings us to one of the most powerful aspects of discipline, its compound effect. Just as money in a bank account earns interest over time, disciplined actions compound to create extraordinary results. Each small choice, each tiny action, each moment of staying true to your commitments adds up to something far greater than the sum of its parts. A watchmaker doesn't create a masterpiece in a single moment of inspiration. It's built second by second, piece by piece, through disciplined attention to detail. The same is true for any worthwhile achievement in life. Success isn't born in grand moments of triumph. It's built in quiet moments of disciplined effort when nobody's watching and no one's cheering. Something that happens in the depths of winter, when the world seems frozen and lifeless. Beneath the frozen ground, seeds lie dormant. They don't question whether spring will come. They don't worry about whether they have what it takes to grow. They simply wait, ready to respond when the conditions are right. This is nature's discipline, the unwavering patience that precedes every bloom. You might be wondering what this has to do with your life, your goals, your dreams, everything. Because discipline isn't just about action, it's about timing, patience, and preparation. It's about doing the right thing at the right time, for the right reasons, even when the results aren't immediately visible. There's a stonemason who spends weeks carefully laying a foundation. To passers-by, it might seem like nothing is happening. The real work, the beautiful walls, the elegant archways remains unseen. But the mason knows that without this disciplined attention to the foundation, nothing built above will stand the test of time. This is where most people lose their way. They want to build the walls before laying the foundation. They want to see the flower before planting the seed. They want the strength without lifting the weights. They want the knowledge without reading the books. But discipline understands that everything worthwhile grows from the ground up. Consider how a pearl is formed. Layer upon layer of nacre deposited with painstaking regularity around an irritating grain of sand. Each layer by itself seems insignificant, but over time, through the oyster's unwavering discipline, something of remarkable beauty is created. Your daily disciplines are like these layers of nacre. They might seem small and insignificant in the moment, but they're creating something precious and valuable. Here's a truth that might change your life. Discipline isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you practice. Just like a muscle, it grows stronger with use. And just like a muscle, it can atrophy without regular exercise. The question isn't whether you're naturally disciplined. The question is whether you're willing to practice discipline today. A lighthouse keeper from years past. Every evening, without fail, they would climb the tower to light the lamp. It didn't matter if they were tired. It didn't matter if they were sick. It didn't matter if no ships were expected that night. They understood that their discipline might be the difference between life and death for sailors they would never meet. Your discipline works the same way. The habits you build, the standards you maintain, the commitments you honor, they don't just affect you. They ripple out into the world in ways you might never see. The parent who reads to their child every night isn't just building literacy, they're creating a lifetime love of learning. The teacher who prepares thoroughly for each class isn't just delivering information, they're modeling excellence for the next generation. But here's where we need to address something crucial. Discipline without direction is just busy work. It's not enough to be disciplined. You need to be disciplined about the right things. This is where many people get lost. They become disciplined about checking their mail 3 times a day, but neglect their health. They become disciplined about keeping their car spotless, but neglect their relationships. Think of discipline like water flowing through a garden. If you direct it properly, it nurtures growth and creates abundance. If you let it flow randomly, it might do more harm than good. The key is to align your discipline with your deepest values and most important goals. There's a bookbinder who works in a small shop. Every day she carefully selects her materials, measures twice before cutting, and tests each binding to ensure it will last. Her discipline isn't random. It's purposeful, aligned with her commitment to creating books that will be treasured for generations. She understands that discipline without purpose is like a ship without a destination, movement without meaning. This brings us to another vital truth about discipline. It's not about being busy. It's about being effective. Many people confuse motion with progress. They stay busy all day but never move closer to their goals. True discipline isn't about filling every moment with activity. It's about focusing your energy on what truly matters. Consider a master painter at work. They don't rush to cover the canvas with paint. They spend time mixing colors, studying the subject, making preliminary sketches. To an outsider, it might look like they're working slowly. But their discipline isn't in how fast they work. It's in how effectively they work. This is where the real power of discipline reveals itself. It's not just about doing things, it's about doing things well. It's about maintaining standards when no one is watching. It's about refusing to cut corners even when you could get away with it. It's about honoring your commitments to yourself even when no one else would know the difference. There's a profound difference between discipline and mere routine. Routine is doing the same things the same way because that's what you've always done. Discipline is doing the right things the right way because that's what excellence demands. Routine is mindless repetition. Discipline is mindful dedication. Think about a master chef preparing a meal. They don't just follow the recipe mechanically, they engage all their senses. They adjust for the quality of ingredients, the humidity in the air, the subtle variations that could affect the final dish. Their discipline isn't in blindly following steps, it's in paying attention to every detail that matters. This kind of attention, this deep, focused care for what we're doing, is becoming rare in our world. We live in an age of distraction where everything seems to demand our immediate attention. But true discipline cuts through the noise. It helps us focus on what's essential and filter out what's merely urgent. Consider the discipline of a violinist practicing scales. In a world full of flashy performances and instant gratification, they choose to spend hours on the fundamentals. They understand that true mastery isn't built on shortcuts. It's built on the discipline of doing the essential things exceptionally well. Have you ever watched a blacksmith at work? In the heat of the forge, they take raw metal, stubborn, unyielding, set in its ways, and through disciplined application of heat and pressure, transform it into something beautiful and useful. The metal doesn't change its essential nature. Iron remains iron. But through disciplined effort, its potential is revealed and realized. This is exactly what discipline does in our lives. It doesn't change who we fundamentally are, but it reveals and develops our hidden potential. Just as the blacksmith must know when to heat, when to strike, and when to let the metal cool, we must learn the rhythm of disciplined growth in our own lives. But here's what most people miss about discipline. It's not just about what you do. It's about who you become in the process. Every time you choose discipline over convenience, you're not just completing a task, you're forging your character. Every time you honor your commitments despite difficulty, you're not just checking off a box. You're strengthening your integrity. Consider a weaver working at their loom. Each thread carefully placed contributes to the final tapestry. The weaver can't see the complete picture while working on individual threads, but they trust in the pattern. They trust in their discipline. This is how character is built, not in grand gestures, but in small, consistent choices woven together over time. And there's something profound that happens when you embrace discipline. You begin to notice that the world responds differently to you. Not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've become someone different. You've become someone who can be counted on, someone who follows through, someone who maintains standards even when it's difficult. The discipline of a lighthouse. Night after night, in calm seas and in storms, it sends out its beam of light. It doesn't decide some nights are too cloudy, or some ships don't deserve its guidance. Its discipline is absolute, and because of that discipline, countless lives are saved. Your discipline can have the same impact, not just on your life, but on everyone around you. This brings us to a crucial understanding about discipline. It's not a solitary pursuit. While the work of discipline is often done alone, its effects ripple out to touch countless lives. The teacher who prepares thoroughly impacts every student in their class. The engineer who double-checks every calculation affects everyone who will use what they build. The parent who maintains consistent boundaries shapes not just their child's present, but their future. But perhaps you're thinking, I've tried discipline before and it didn't work. Let me ask you something. Would you expect a single workout to transform your body? Would you expect a single practice session to make you a master musician? Would you expect a single day of study to earn you a degree? Of course not. Yet somehow we expect our attempts at discipline to yield immediate, transformative results. There's a potter who works with clay. Day after day, they center the clay on the wheel, shape it with careful pressure, adjust for its moisture content and consistency. Some pieces crack in the kiln, others don't turn out quite right. But the potter knows that each attempt, successful or not, builds their skill. Each practice strengthens their discipline. This is where real transformation begins. In understanding that discipline isn't about perfection, it's about progression. It's not about never failing. It's about always getting back up. It's not about being the best. It's about being better than you were yesterday. Consider the discipline of a tree growing through concrete. It doesn't break through in a single dramatic moment. It grows steadily, consistently, adding cell by cell until the seemingly impenetrable barrier gives way. This is how discipline works in your life, not through dramatic breakthroughs, but through steady, consistent pressure applied in the right direction. But here's what you must understand about this kind of growth. It happens beneath the surface before it becomes visible to others. Just as the tree's roots must develop before the trunk can push through, your discipline must work invisibly before its results become apparent to the world. There's a watchmaker who spends years mastering their craft. In the beginning, their work is rough, imperfect, but they maintain the discipline of practice, of learning from each mistake, of constantly refining their technique. They understand that mastery isn't in avoiding mistakes, it's in the discipline of learning from them. This brings us to another crucial truth about discipline. It's not about avoiding failure, it's about responding to it correctly. Every master has failed more times than the average person has even tried. The difference isn't in their rate of failure, it's in their response to it. They use discipline to turn every failure into a lesson, every setback into a setup for a comeback. A garden in early spring. When the gardener plants seeds, they can't see the flowers that will bloom. They can't smell the fragrance that will fill the air. They can't enjoy the shade of trees yet to grow. But they plant anyway. They water anyway. They tend the soil anyway. This is discipline in its purest form, doing what needs to be done today for results that may not be visible for months or years. Your life is like that garden. Every disciplined action you take today is planting seeds for your future. Every book you read, every skill you practice, every relationship you nurture, every healthy choice you make. These are seeds that will grow into the garden of your future. But here's the most beautiful thing about discipline. It doesn't just change what you can do, it changes what you can see. As you develop discipline in one area of your life, you begin to see possibilities you never noticed before. Just as a trained musician can hear harmonies that others miss, a disciplined mind can see opportunities that others overlook. There's something remarkable that happens in the depths of a diamond mine. Under immense pressure over extended periods, common carbon transforms into one of the most precious substances on Earth. The carbon doesn't choose to become a diamond, but it yields to the persistent pressure that transforms it. Your discipline is like that pressure, persistent, transformative, and ultimately creating something of extraordinary value. This transformation isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become in the process. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you're not just building habits, you're building character. Every time you persist when others would quit, you're not just showing determination, you're developing strength that will serve you in ways you can't yet imagine. Consider the discipline of a master glass blower. They understand that their craft requires not just skill, but perfect timing. Too much heat, and the glass becomes unworkable. Too little, and it won't transform. The same is true of personal growth through discipline. There are times to push hard and times to consolidate your gains, times to challenge yourself and times to rest. The master knows the difference. But here's what you must understand about this journey of discipline. The hardest person to discipline is yourself. It's easy to see what others should do. It's easy to give advice. It's easy to recognize the need for discipline in others' lives. But to turn that lens of discipline on yourself, that requires a special kind of courage. There's a silversmith who works with precious metals. Before they can create anything beautiful, they must first refine the silver, removing impurities through careful application of heat. Your discipline works the same way. It refines you, removing the impurities of bad habits, loose thinking, and undisciplined emotions. But just like the silversmith's fire, this refinement isn't always comfortable. This brings us to a fundamental truth about discipline. It's not about being perfect. It's about being better. Better than you were yesterday. Better than what comes easily. Better than what others might expect of you. The question isn't, are you disciplined enough? The question is, are you becoming more disciplined? The discipline of the tides. Day after day, year after year, millennium after millennium, they advance and retreat with perfect regularity. They don't tire. They don't decide some days are too difficult. They don't make excuses. This is the kind of unwavering consistency that true discipline demands and rewards. But perhaps you're wondering, is it too late for me to develop this kind of discipline? Let me tell you something powerful. As long as you're breathing, it's not too late to begin. Just as a book isn't judged by its first chapter, your life isn't defined by your past lack of discipline. What matters is what you choose to do from this moment forward. There's a stonemason who started learning his craft later in life. While others said he was too old to begin, he understood a profound truth. The time will pass anyway. 5 years from now, you'll be 5 years older, whether you develop discipline or not. The only question is, who will you be when those 5 years have passed? This is where the real power of discipline reveals itself. It's not just about what you achieve. It's about who you become. Every disciplined action you take is like a vote for the person you want to be. Every time you choose the harder, right over the easy or wrong, you're not just making a decision. You're making yourself. Consider a river carving its path through a mountain. It doesn't happen in a day or a year or even a lifetime. But through persistent, disciplined action, the water reshapes the very rock itself. Your discipline can reshape your life in the same way, not through sudden dramatic changes, but through persistent, consistent effort applied in the right direction. The beauty of discipline is that it compounds. Just as money in a bank account earns interest, disciplined actions create compound returns in your life. Each small victory makes the next one easier. Each challenge overcome builds strength for future battles. Each skill mastered becomes a foundation for learning new skills. There's a violin maker who understands this principle deeply. They know that the quality of the instrument isn't determined by a single grand gesture, but by thousands of tiny, disciplined decisions. The angle of each cut, the thickness of each piece, the care in each joint. All of these small choices add up to create something magnificent. Your life works the same way. It's not the occasional burst of effort that defines you. It's the accumulated effect of disciplined choices made day after day. The question isn't whether you can do everything perfectly. The question is whether you can do the important things consistently. As we stand here together, consider this. Every great achievement in human history, every masterpiece created, every breakthrough discovered, every life transformed, all of these began with discipline. Not with talent alone, not with opportunity alone, not with luck alone, but with the disciplined application of whatever resources were at hand. You have those same resources within you right now. You have the same 24 hours each day that every great achiever had. You have the same capacity for discipline that every master has developed. The only question is, what will you do with it? Remember that child we spoke of at the beginning, the one who said, "I can't do it." That child lives in all of us, but so does the capacity to prove that child wrong. So does the ability to develop the discipline that transforms "I can't" into "I can," and eventually into "I did." The door you want to open, whether it leads to better health, stronger relationships, greater achievement, or deeper fulfillment, that door isn't locked. It's simply waiting for the key of discipline to unlock it. And that key isn't something you need to find. It's something you need to forge through daily choices, consistent effort, and unwavering commitment. Your discipline is the key that will unlock every door. Not just the doors you can see right now, but doors you haven't even discovered yet. Doors that lead to possibilities you can't even imagine. The only question is, will you forge that key? Will you develop that discipline? Will you become the person who not only knocks on doors, but has the power to unlock them? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember this, discipline isn't a punishment, it's a privilege. It's the privilege of creating your own future, shaping your own character, and building your own legacy. It's the privilege of becoming someone who not only dreams of better things, but has the strength, the capability, and the unwavering discipline to make those dreams reality. The time to begin is now. Not when conditions are perfect, not when it feels easier, not when others approve. Now. Because discipline doesn't wait for perfect conditions, it creates them. It doesn't wait for opportunities, it generates them. It doesn't wait for doors to open, it unlocks them. Your journey of discipline begins with your next choice. Make it count.